Warning: the following episode of Blackwell podcast contains spoilers for all episodes of Life is Strange.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Blackwell Podcast. I'm Jamie, joined by Joey.
Hello.
Aaron.
Hey.
Sean.
Hey.
And Zach.
Howdy.
Today, it's a bit of a special episode. Joey, would you like to explain why?
Yeah, so this isn't so much an episode that's focused on Life is Strange itself, which has been what all of our episodes have been, pretty much. Today, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to do an episode that's focused on that. Now, of course, that does tie into Life is Strange some. As we know, a lot of the topics and themes discussed in Life is Strange are pertinent to that. But today we're going to be focusing more just kind of on our own experiences in dealing with mental illnesses and mental health in general. And I think what kind of like to do is just, I guess, in giving some of our own experiences with it, maybe show that, you know, you're not alone in suffering, and maybe something that we do might help you out, or, and I guess should be a disclaimer that none of us are licensed therapists or anything like that. We're going to try our best to not give any outward advice as to what you should do. Each individual case is different. So keep that in mind. But we did kind of just want to discuss it. It is something that's really important to all of us. And yeah.
So like Joey said, this isn't really going to be a discussion about Life is Strange per se, but we will mention it whenever it's relevant. So it's basically a therapy session for us, really.
Right.
Yeah. So we get to break down the barrier. You get to learn a little bit about us, which we don't normally tend to do, but since it's Mental Health Awareness Month, it's important that we show that everyone's human, everyone has flaws. It's important.
Right. And I think it's important to destigmatize it as well.
That's what I was going to say, and kind of help end the idea of talking about mental health being a bad thing, because it's really important, and it's something that we shouldn't feel as much shame in as we do as a society.
Right. And, it's the equivalent of any other, chronic illness. If there's nothing to be ashamed of, if you had high cholesterol, even, this is a pretty, base level example. You take medication for it, or, you would change your diet or something to do it. Something that, is always going to be there, but it's not, anything, like Sean, you said, it's not anything to be ashamed of. So
I think it's important to remember that your brain is a part of your body, and like any body part, if it's broken or it's not working correctly, then it's okay to get help, and it's okay to talk about that being a problem. So that's something that I feel people tend to forget a lot.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, who wants to kick it off?
Well,
it's hard to figure out where to start.
Would you like me?
Right.
Would you like me to start, because the podcast did kind of start with mental health, really, didn't it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's a little bit of story time for me. The podcast has a bit of a weird history, where the first episode comes out August 2015, whilst the second episode comes out about 3 months later, right, Joey?
Right.
That was because
Yeah, I think it was September.
I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which it sucks. It really does. And it really messed with my head those 3 months, and I was like really unsure if the podcast was going to continue or not, because my life was changing dramatically. I couldn't go to college anymore. I had to like get surgery. It was rough. But I knew I wasn't be able to go to college for a very, very, very long time, which I'll kind of touch a little bit later on. But I decided to do the podcast as kind of like a coping mechanism to kind of like distract myself from everything that's happening. And it kind of paid off, I want to say. But throughout it, I noticed my moods were getting very, very low. So I wanted to change that. So I went to my GP and said, I'm not feeling any happier, per se, even though I know, like, all this stuff's happening. So I want to go on an antidepressant. And the GP's great here. He recommended an antidepressant which doesn't have any side effects of an inflammation, which is great. But I've been taking it for about over a year now, and it's caused a rather bizarre side effect, which is it's depersonalization, which it's basically, I don't know how to I don't think it's really depersonalization, but it's like the best way I can describe it. It's like I'm very neutral about everything. I don't have any like expressed thoughts or anything like that. I just feel distant from everything.
Right, kind of an apathy.
Yeah. Which I talked with a psychologist a few weeks ago, and they said it was probably because of the drug, because I've been taking it so long and in quite a high dose. So I'm going to try and get off that drug now, slowly get off it. And yeah, I gotta be very careful with taking that drug slowly, because Joey can vouch for this. I didn't take it one day during the actual live stream, and I was very, very ill afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with those is
Dependency.
they're in your system.
Yeah.
You can't just cut them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like even before that, I knew what Crohn's was. I knew I was ill, but I didn't know what to do. So I was pretty sad anyway that I was just couldn't go to college because there was constant food poisoning symptoms and all that stuff. And that's kind of like how I came across Life is Strange, because I was homebound. And, fuck, without that game, that really did change my life for the better, honestly. Without it, I wouldn't have had the dedication that I would have today. I wouldn't be here. The podcast wouldn't exist. Yeah, it's hard to fucking fathom, really. I don't really know what else to say, unfortunately. I'm sorry, guys. Like, it's the best way I describe this. If people who are very close to me know that whenever I speak, I tend to go off the wall I tend to go off topic quite frequently. But that's like how my brain works. And it kind of works with my attention span as well, where I can't really do I can't really sit down and do anything unless I have a complete dedication for it, which I do for the podcast, which is amazing. Which, if I could figure out how to do that for everything, I would be fine. But I think I should stop now before I just start going ahead of myself.
Right. Yeah, I think the game kind of came at a serendipitous time for a lot of us. Um, of course, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I know. Um, so my story is very sordid. I had an abusive childhood, physically abusive, um, which kind of I don't have too many fond memories of my childhood, and that kind of shaped my teenage years as well. I was diagnosed pretty young. I don't remember how young exactly, but pretty young um, with depression. Um, and of course, now it's been many, many years. Uh, and so I went, psychiatrist and therapist and stuff like that. Um, Never had a really great home life. And I think just all of it kind of like, it's like a constant like weight, I guess.
Yeah.
And I try not to live in the past. Try to I'm very different now from who I was, hell, even 5 years ago. Um, but I kind of like, I guess, started it off. Like I said, rough teenage years as well. Didn't do great in school, not because I wasn't capable of it. It's just incredibly unmotivated. Had too much stuff going on to really like be able to focus on school. Um, so pretty much all of my school years were not fun. I don't look back on them fondly. Uh, when I graduated high school, joined the army, I was in for 6 years. Um, not a great, not a great experience, but I mean, I guess like it did help me learn a few things about myself. I guess really it helped me, which I don't know if this is really necessarily a good thing, but it helped me. Well, actually, I would say it's probably bad, but it helped me mask a lot of like behavioral stuff that was like indicative of what I had going on mentally. So I guess I learned how to operate, function because I had to. Um, and um, I go through episodes like really, really bad. Like I'll have like really high episodes, where everything's fine, um, doing fine. I like start like I just work my ass off at everything I'm doing, tackle a lot of projects, just get involved with stuff, and then I have really, really low periods too, and those are, of course, the worst. I've for probably about the past year, a little less than a year or so, I've been going through. It's been getting progressively worse. I'll say. Um, and I think the worst part of it is just how consuming it is.
Totally.
How you can't focus on anything else other than just what's going on in your head. You can't like you can't function. I mean, like it's just you get so wrapped up in yourself. It's hard to. It comes across as you not caring about other people. It comes across as you being distant. For me, anyway. And it's not that. It's just there's so much noise inside of my head and just so much shit going on, and I'm just such a low point that it, it is inherently selfish, but not in a way that like, oh, you're being selfish, you should feel bad, but it just is because when it takes all of your energy and all of your like focus and thought processes just to like survive, even if you're not doing shit all day, even if you're just like laying there, just to like I don't know, keep your body functioning. It feels like it's like on manual and like, and there's not even necessarily a will to do that. So when you got all that going on in your head and all that, it's like it's hard to focus on anything. And like I'm in college right now. It has certainly taken its toll on that. When I started off, I made Dean's List, and now I'm struggling, and it's like it's just purely because of like all the shit going on. It's so hard to get anything done. It's so hard to find the will to do it. I think one of the best things that I've been lucky in is that having people that are really close to me, that feel really close, just kind of being there for me, putting up with my shit. Just that's been like one of the best things. I don't have insurance that I can use for treatment or anything like that, unfortunately. So I'm just doing my best to hang on until I get to a point where I can, actually tackle this head on and get treatment for whatever's going on with me. But it's been my point being, I guess, it's been a long ramble. It is a long running thing, and I guess it's a big delineation between having depression or some like variation of depression, and then also just being depressed, because one is an emotion, and the other is like kind of like your brain just doesn't fire right. The synapses don't work the way they're supposed to. You don't produce the serotonin that you need, stuff like that. And I know it can be a lot to deal with. I know I can be a lot, especially when I get really bad. But I think people being patient with me and all that has done wonders. And I know Zach and his wife Amy are like one of the biggest reasons that I'm even here still, because I don't think I could do it on my own. And I think that's one of the biggest things of like growing up for me, is realizing that I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to do it alone. I always, like, for several years was like, and it's still something I struggle with. It's still like I'm very headstrong in that like I should be able to solve a problem by myself.
Yeah.
But don't have to, and you shouldn't have to. And we're social creatures, we're humans are, and so having people that kind of help you, if nothing more than just being there to listen, providing distraction if you need it, and so I think that's like one of the best things that I have going for me right now. And it's always, like I said, it's always been something that I've struggled with. Life is Strange kind of came in not the worst times, but it was like it was just me and my dog pretty much. I had a friend whom I hung out with, but I was like kind of just, I guess, self-imposed isolation, and I was fine with it. And I never really examined why I was okay with it. But anyway, came. I thought it was like a really important game. I wanted to reach out about it, which when Jamie posted about the podcast, I jumped on that. My dog, she was very much was like a support animal in the sense that like she knew if I was having a really rough time. She wasn't trained for it, but I mean, like we were extremely close, and she knew like how to calm me down, stuff like that. So it was just me and her. A few months in August, one day in August, she seized up. She had a seizure, and it was like, this is the first time that had ever happened, and she was going on 11 years old. So I rushed her to the vet, got x-rays, just trying to figure out what was going on. She had cancer, and it was like pretty much all over her body, and she never like before the seizure, she never like had any signs of it at all. And so it was like complete shock, and pretty much the treatment was going to be incredibly expensive, which I wasn't able to afford. Not to mention just the effect that it would have on her and having to bring. She was a very anxious dog if I wasn't around, and like vets are like high stress environments for pets, especially if they're not used to it. And so like that I would have to take her into the vet every 2 weeks and all that. It just really wasn't good for her. So uh, I had to put her down, and it was pretty much like a day turnaround. Like she seized up that morning, and by close of business, I had to go put her down. I took her home. I wanted to give her a good last day, but from just everything that morning when I brought her back, she was like struggling breathing. She was like very extremely lethargic and all that. So just like even the option of giving her a last day like that wasn't going to be the possibility. So I was alone that weekend. It was just for the first time in like 10 years I like didn't have her. And it was not the suicidal ideations were pretty strong, but I was like, well, let me, got this podcast going now, and so it was kind of like, well, I've got this project, maybe I can just throw myself at that. And it has helped. The podcast, our growth with it, the people that we've met, the friends that I've made through it. And that's kind of why I got my Life is Strange tattoo. It was symbolic of something that was more than just a video game. It was kind of an event that would really shape these past couple of years. And so now I have a goal. I want to study programming, wanting to get into game development, game design and all that. And that's kind of what I'm working toward. So, and I think I probably wouldn't have come to the decision to do that and realize that that's just really what I want to do if it weren't for Life is Strange and the ability that we've had to talk to people in the industry and all that. So through and through, it's been a very hugely shaping experience for me. And again, it's not to say, like I said, this past year has been extremely rough. So it's not to say that I don't still have my struggles, but all right, I'm rambling. I've been talking for a very long time. So I will pass the mic.
It's cool.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, man.
Big time.
All right, I guess I can talk some. So it's hard to figure out where to start.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well.
Yeah.
I had a rough childhood here and there. I think at the time, I don't know, maybe I accepted it or didn't think it was that bad, but upon reflection, it was pretty rough. There was some abuse, physically, and a lot of mental abuse. And I don't think that's something I really figured out until, I don't know, probably till after I was out of high school. It was kind of like a slow set in, I don't know, just a reflecting back on everything. Sometimes you just figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a really rough last year of high school. I finished high school by the grace of my teachers, basically allowing me all but to cheat. If it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have gotten out of high school because I was just in such a bad spot that I couldn't focus and I couldn't get anything done. And I also have ADD, which makes school hard enough on its own. So that comboed with just not being able to focus on anything besides what was happening at home. I really couldn't get anywhere. I got out of high school went to an okay job for a while, but I kind of just went into like a slow decline. I think to the point of complacency, that I just kind of like resigned myself to this is how things were, and it's how they were gonna be, and that was just gonna be life. And you don't really whenever that happens, whenever you do fall into like a complacent state, at least for me, I didn't realize that I was so complacent. I didn't realize that like I had just resigned to just being miserable. It was just kind of, in that moment, it was just kind of, this is life. Like, you know, this is just how it is. And it wasn't until after Life is Strange was out that I kind of realized that I had just spent like the last several years of my life just being completely complacent. And that was the real reason I think I figured that out was meeting people because of Life is Strange. Life is Strange was a really important game for me, but I don't know if any of the exact... I don't know if it was... I don't think the game affected me as much as the people that I've met because of it have affected me. The game definitely was like one of the hardest hitting like pieces of media I've ever consumed. Like it really like struck me deep. But the people I've talked to and the people I've met since then because of that game through it are definitely have had like way more of an impact. I met my wife Amy, sitting here next to me, being silent. And I met Joey and Jamie and several other really awesome people who, if they listen to this, they know who they are. Even if we don't talk so much anymore with some of those people, I still think they're really important, and meeting them was very important for me. And I don't know, it was after I met these people that I did kind of realize that, you know, I had grown complacent and that I wasn't really happy with where I was, and that things didn't have to be that way, and things weren't always going to suck. And, you know, things got better. Things got a lot better. I moved away from my household that you know, I had a lot of like bad memories in, and the people, namely one person who was really the problem of my childhood was still there. So I got out of that house, I got away from that person, and that really helped. And it was really, I don't know, I think Life is Strange was, I don't know if it necessarily saved my life, but it definitely saved me from complacency and from just being like living out like a boring gray, you know, life. Just everything was just pretty boring and miserable every day.
Right.
More recently, I've been tackling with something that I've been dealing with for a very long time and didn't really realize I was dealing with. I don't know how specific I want to get, but I will say I've been dealing with addiction, and I'm in a much better place than I was even a year ago. Clean, but I still have a lot of guilt and regret, and that's been really hard on me in the past few months. Some days are alright, some days are good. You can wake up, you can go out, do what you gotta do that day, you can be happy, you can have fun. Some days are really bad. Some days you just kind of want to sleep all day, or just stare at a wall, or smash everything. And it's really tough, but I think more recently, it's the people that I know again have gotten me through recently, tough times. My wife, Joey, even if he doesn't know it, our friend on Twitter, Tomorrow Heart, has been a recent help, and you know, I don't know, things. Man, today I got off work and I came home and I just laid in bed and fell asleep for 4 hours, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to sleep. I had no intention of sleeping, but I just did, and it was really miserable, and it kind of ruined. I thought the rest of today was going to be really terrible, and I was just going to be angry all night because I had wasted 4 hours of my day when I wanted to do other things. I had stuff I was planning on doing, and now, I don't know, I woke up, I hung out with my wife, we watched some TV, and I kind of psyched myself up for this, and I don't know, I'm already feeling better. But, I'm still, stuff still sucks sometimes, but I think it's not always going to be that way, and things will get better, and I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's difficult to kind of end after like just talking about
Yeah. Right.
everything. You don't really know how to end, but I'll kind of touch on that later when all of us have taken the time to speak.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Zach.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you.
Thanks. I guess I could speak a little now, if that's cool.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Nice. Well, I've kind of talked about, like, how Life is Strange has, like, helped me with, like, my mum dying and stuff like that, but, I have borderline personality disorder, which is, like, a whole thing that I can't really explain, because I don't know, to be honest, that well. All I know is, like, it's the worst, but it's kind of, I would say it's more of a mood disorder than anything. Like, I have manic periods and I have depressive periods. They're called episodes, and it's a pain in the ass. And depression comes with it, and anxiety, but, yeah, it's, like, a thing that kind of, for a while, ruled my life and what I did and how I behaved. But I'm at a place where I'm, like, better with dealing with it now, but I still have my issues, definitely. But the same goes with some other people that I've spoken. I had, like, a tough childhood as well. Like, obviously it wasn't always tough, but there was just, like, stuff that happened. Like, me and Rachel always joke about how my life is just a series of, like, really shitty events. Because, like, everything that, like, bad can happen has kind of, like, happened to me. But, like, where, like, when I got really kind of, like, depressed and, like, sick was probably when I was 14, I believe, and I started dating this guy, and he was 19, but at the time I didn't see a problem with it, and he was the first guy to kind of, like, well, the first anybody to, like, be interested in me at all, because I was, like, not very cool when I was younger, and I still am not, but at the time, like, he was, like, the first person to show interest in me, so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll go with him. So I started going out with this guy, and he was a not very nice guy, but I didn't realise it at the time, because I was very young. Like, at the time I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was in control of who I was, but I was 14, like, I had no idea, and he was 19, so, and, but he was very emotionally manipulative, and it took me some time to realise, but he also sexually assaulted me, and he was very abusive, but I didn't realise that until, like, a couple of months into the relationship, and I realised that wasn't who I was, and I wasn't happy at all, and I kind of, like, tried to break up with him, and he blackmailed me into not breaking up with him, and then like the month after that, I realised that I had feelings for my best friend who was a girl. So that was like a whole other thing. And then, yeah, I ended up breaking up with him, but like it was just a horrible life experience for 9 months. But like was said before, like in hindsight, like I was too naive and too young to realise that was what was going on there. But like
Right.
when I kind of got a bit older, I realised like what had happened, and like I was not okay about it naturally. And I had like issues with self-harm and suicide, and it was just a really rough period for me. And then I kind of got better, well, as much as you can do, and I learned to like deal with what had happened and like my past. And I don't really talk about it that much. This is the first time probably publicly talking about it, but I learned to talk about it with like people I was close to, and like I felt a lot of shame in it. But now, like I know that it's not my fault, and I was young, so that's something that I feel is important for me and who I am today, because I definitely did feel a lot of shame in that happening to me. But yeah, I feel like that happens with a lot of my friends who have suffered the same thing. They had the same kind of feeling, and they've kind of grown to realise that, hey, it's okay, and to talk about it and be open about it. So that was obviously horrible. But then, like, fast forwarding a couple of years, my parents, like, didn't get divorced, but they split, and my dad was never really in my life much because he works abroad and that kind of thing, so he was never really there. And my mum was like kind of my rock as a kid. She was like the person who, like, she did everything for my family, like she was always there. And then, so January 14th, I believe, of 2015, I, like, came home from school, and my mum was like, oh, I have a really bad headache. Naturally, you don't think that's gonna be, like, a big deal. And she was like, oh, I'm just gonna go for a nap. I'll, like, see you in a bit. Like, I just have a really bad headache. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna take a nap too. Because I was, like, 15 and tired. I don't know what to tell you. And then I woke up, and I found my mum unconscious. And I went to go find my brother, because my brother's room was, like, in a different section of my house. And I told him what happened, and he'd been, like, I think he might have been asleep as well. But regardless, I told him that I'd found my mum, and that she was unconscious, and I, like, didn't know what to do, obviously, because I was, like, trying to wake her up. I was, like, but I knew she would have woken up, like, pretty easily, because she's, like, a mum of, like, 3 kids, like, the smallest thing, and she's up. So then we were, like, talking, and I called an ambulance, and they came and took her, and we went to hospital together, and then we found out that she'd had a brain hemorrhage, and they said they were going to perform a surgery on her to release the blood that was around her brain, I believe. I don't know, I'm bad at science. But then they said, I think a couple of hours later, I don't know, it gets foggy, the timeline. It was like over the course of 2 days that all this kind of happened, from going to the hospital and stuff. And I had to go stay with my girlfriend at the time, but we were not out, so it was just my best friend. So I had to stay with her, and my brother came with us, because my dad obviously was away, and my sister was at university, so we didn't have anyone else, and my family doesn't live anywhere near us. So then they told us they couldn't perform the surgery because there wasn't enough time or something like that, or it's too late, or it wouldn't help, and it would probably, if it did work, she would have been in a really bad state. So that didn't happen, and she passed away. And that was probably, like, one of the lowest places I've been in my life. Just, like, I've honestly, just so much bad stuff has happened, but that was, like, the thing that really ruined it, because, like, everything that had gone on, because she really was my rock. Like, me and my brother were so, like, scared because we didn't know what was going to happen to us. Like, everything in our life had just been, like, turned upside down. Like, there was nothing, we kind of knew what to do. We were still kids, still in school. I had my, like, finals coming up, and it was just a really crap time. And so all that happened, and I ended up going to school, like, 3 days later, and I don't know why I did that, because that was a really bad choice, because it was only a lot more stress on my shoulders, but I just wanted to get back into normality, because everything else in my life was kind of a mess. And I had a lot of problems then, because I just didn't really know how to deal with how I was feeling, or what was going on. And my dad came back, and I still don't have, like, the best relationship with him, because he's, like, he kind of has some alcoholism issues, so we don't really get along on the best kind of track. So it's still, like when my mum was gone, it was, like, a big part of me was gone. And, yeah, just, like, going to school and stuff was just really difficult, and I somehow managed to, like, pass all my exams and, like, graduate school, which is good, because otherwise I would not be here at university. But then, like, not much longer, a couple of months after that, I started to realise that, like, I had a lot of mental health issues. Like, before I'd known that I had depression, but I hadn't gone to see anyone about it, because I didn't feel like anyone could help me. But at that point in my life, I realised that it was okay to ask for help, because for a very long time I didn't think that was an option, mainly because I didn't want people to pity me, because I have a lot of issues with that. Like, I don't want people to think, like, oh, poor Sean, but that kind of thing. But I realised that's not how it is, like, and it's okay to ask for help if you need it, because it's important to see people and talk to people, whether that be just a friend or a doctor or a counsellor or anything like that. Don't feel afraid to reach out, because you're never going to be shamed for it. So I went to see people, and I had lots of different therapy, and ever since then I've, like, started feeling a lot better, and I've learned to deal with my life and my mind and my issues. But so not just a couple of months after, I think I was PewDiePie at the time. I saw him upload an episode of Life is Strange, and I was like, cool, I'll check that out. And then I, like, immediately totally connected with Chloe, and she just was, like, a very important person to me, and I kind of confided in what was going on with her and how she felt, because I was like, that's the only way I could describe it at the time. I was just so pissed off at the world. Like, I found it really difficult to, like, be sad about it, because, again, I had that whole concept of that made me weak, or, like, people didn't want to be around me if I was sad, so I kind of thought it was just easier to be angry about stuff than to, like, actually, like, convey my, like, because my depression in, like, a sad way. I was just pissed off, like, at everything and everyone, and I pushed, like, everyone in my life away, and my friends, and so Chloe was, like, the only thing I kind of, like, identified with. And just Life is Strange, like, when I really, at the time, I felt like I had nothing, and with Life is Strange, like, I had Chloe to, like, relate to, and just everything about it. Like, I loved the music, I loved the vibe. It was just, I don't know, it really felt like something, it just took a place in my life where I just had nothing, and it was always something I could look forward to, like a new episode coming out, or, like, just going on Tumblr and talking to people about the episodes, and, like, talking about theories and that kind of thing. It was just like I found a purpose again, as dumb as that sounds. And then I had my blog, which is, like, got to, like, 10k followers before I lost it, but it was just, like, as not to, like, talk about numbers and stuff, but, like, it felt like I'd made something and I had a purpose and I was a part of something again, and that was really important to me. And just, like, being involved with the community. And, like, now I have Rachel, who's, like, I would easily say my best friend, and I've only known her for 8 months now. We've only been talked for 8 months, but she'd followed me for a while before that, and, like, now I talk to her every day, and she's, like, my go-to person. Like, she really is my best friend. And I'm just grateful for, like, meeting so many amazing people. Like, obviously, you guys on the podcast, and Rachel, and so many other people that I've met online, like Rowan, just so many cool and interesting people who have so much respect and, like, love for me, and I have the equal amount for them, and it's just really great. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like I would probably be a lot more stuck if I hadn't have found so many great people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and like I said, like, the most important thing for me was reaching out and talking about the way that I was, like, feeling. And, like, at first it was just me, like, posting on Tumblr being like, oh, this happened, and it's just like, but even that was, like, it was rewarding because I was kind of getting those feelings out rather than just sitting them inside my room and, like, bottling it all up and just kind of dealing with, like, anger just building and building for it to go nowhere and to just feel worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I'm, like, at university now, and I moved out from my home, so I don't really see my dad that much anyway. And I was, like, when I came to university, I was a lot happier because I was just before I moved to university, I was stuck in a really bad situation because my dad was staying at my house for a while, and he was just, like, not great. And I was trying to move out before that, but complications because I was still in school and stuff. So moving to university was, like, a really big thing for me, and especially because now at university, when I was in school, I had a lot of issues with people bullying me for being gay and stuff like that, which I know is such a cliche, but, like, it was a real problem at the time. So when I came to university, I met, like, all my friends, and a lot of them are queer people, thanks to, like, being in an LGBT society, and, like, I feel like I've found my place and, like, who I want to surround myself with more, and, like, people who understand me, and that's, like, really important. It's about finding a place to belong and a place to be with people who respect you, which for a while I didn't have. Like, I didn't have a close circle of friends, I didn't have people I could communicate with, and now I feel like I do have that, and that's just a support system is just, like, something I rely on a lot now.
Right.
And but I still have some really, like, shitty times. Like, at the moment, I've been going through quite a bad depressive period, and I had to, whilst I was doing really well at the beginning of the year, I was, like, one of the top students in my class, I got really good grades, and then around a couple of months ago, I kind of slipped a bit, and I went downhill because I just didn't have any motivation to get out of class. I didn't have to get out of my room to go to class in the mornings and stuff like that. I just wanted to stay in and sleep, and, like, the more that I did that, the worse I felt about myself, so it was just, like, a really bad cycle.
Yeah.
And then I had to miss an assessment a couple of weeks ago and get extenuated circumstances, but it was fine. And, like, at the time I was like, I'm gonna get kicked out of university, and I was just really, like, overthinking everything and getting worried, and which just made it 100 times worse. And then my lecturer called me in. He was like, hey, is everything okay? And I was, like, talking to him and told him what was going on, and I talked about having borderline personality disorder and that kind of thing, and just, like, about depression in general. And he, like, really understood, and he, like, I was like, oh no, it's not a valid excuse, and he was like, no, it is a valid excuse. He was like, that it's always a valid excuse. Like, if you don't feel good, if you feel unwell, no matter what it is, then you can talk to us, and we're here to help. And they've been really great with that kind of thing. And he was like, you just have to communicate with us and let us know what's going on, and we're here to, like, help you get through it. And that's something I'm really grateful for as well, because, like I said, for a while I had issues, like, talking about the way I felt in case people were just like, oh, she's being dumb. And I still struggle with that, like, especially when I'm going through those kind of periods. So knowing that, being reassured, and knowing that, like, it was okay to, like, have the time off and, like, talk to my lecturers about it, and it was okay that I was, like, sucking a little bit at college. It was nice, and, like, now I'm, like, feel a lot better because I've managed to get on top of work and sort it all out. But it is really difficult at times when I do go through those periods, because it feels like there isn't any coming out of it, because like you said, Joey, I think it does kind of consume you and everything you do, and it feels really hard to get out of like this hole that you've built for yourself, and it feels like there is no end to that. But
Right.
I feel like I'm a lot better now. But yeah, life can be hard, but for me, I feel blessed, like you said, Zach, that I have so many people around me that I can talk to now.
Well, good. I'm glad things are at least looking up. But it sounds like struggles aside, much better place to be in.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's an important takeaway, is that things might always be hard. There will always be struggles, even if like, you know, neurotypical, like you don't have to worry about any of the additional things that come along with mental health issues. Life is just has a way of having some rough times, but I think an important takeaway is that even though there will be struggles, there's still things to hold on for, still things to hold out for. There will come an opportunity where you will find the people that it feels like you were meant to be around. You'll find something that drives you. And that's what I kind of try to tell myself. Doesn't always work, but it's just, there's stuff you want to do before this is all over, before my time on Earth here is done. There's stuff that I want to get done, so
yeah,
don't give up until you see that, at the least. Because every new opportunity that comes along presents just so many things. Like, 4 years ago, if you'd asked me about like me ever foreseeing any of the stuff that I have in my life now with the podcast, what little bit of notoriety we've garnered, the friends that I have now, it would have been 100% completely unforeseeable. It just, like, if you'd asked me about it, it wouldn't have even registered as like a possibility for me. So there's with all the bad things that happen, there's also just some great things that can happen. And we're always going to learn more about ourselves, what we do like, just as importantly what we don't like. So it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing that through, and that's just something that I have to tell myself over and over during the times where it's really bad and where it doesn't seem like it's worth it. That there will be something that makes it worth it. So
yeah. And I think it's also really important to remember that no matter how small the kind of thing, the struggle that you're facing, or how small you think it may be, those emotions that you feel are always valid. Mm-hmm. Whether it's something as small as like you got a bad grade or anything like that, like if it makes you feel bad, then you don't have to be ashamed of that. That's valid. You can't help the way that it makes you feel and like how your brain works. And if you just feel sad for no reason, which I do all the time, I feel depressed. There's days where I just wake up and I decide, no, I don't feel like being here today. That's totally valid, and that's nothing. It's not your fault. You can't help that. That's the reaction your brain is having to these situations that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. And I don't know. You shouldn't feel ashamed if you've got a stomach ache or you catch a cold or something like that, you know, like, and it's of course different, but you also just shouldn't be ashamed if you have a bad day where you just can't get out of bed. Where, I mean, there's always like the same with like a physical illness. You know, you want to like boost your immune system in the ways that you can, and like, you know, take something like if you got an upset stomach or something like that. There's things that you should do to help prevent in the future, and also to like ease some of the suffering at the time. But my point is, it's just as it should be thought of in my mind. It should be thought of just like that. If I'm having a bad day where I just can't get out of bed, I can't do anything, can't focus on anything except like the fact that I want to die, I shouldn't like be ashamed of that. And like, it would be the same of me feeling ashamed if like, I don't know, like I had upset stomach or something like that, or I was feeling nauseous or like something along those lines. It's I don't know, it's real. It's not fake. It's not I don't know. Yeah, it's not anything to be ashamed of.
Just because it's something you can't necessarily see doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
It's still something, like I said, like the brain is a part of your body. If it's
Right.
being fucky, then it's being fucky. That's not something you can
Right.
control. It's not that easy. If it was that easy, people would be a lot happier. There would be a lot less struggles in people's lives. And I feel like because it is something that to do with your brain, it's again so easy to convince yourself that it isn't real and being like, oh, I'm just being dumb, which is not true.
Right. And sorry.
No, carry on.
And it's like there's the feeling for me too where it's like, am I being dumb? Am I depressed right now, or am I just being lazy?
Yeah, totally.
And like, if I am being lazy, why am I being lazy? And then I don't know. I try not to invalidate myself. That is thought processes that I go through, but I try not to invalidate. I try not to berate myself for that, because I think that only just exasperates the whole issue.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, Sean.
Yeah.
No problem.
Aaron, did you have anything?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to call out something Sean had said because it really resonated with me, and I thought it was really cool that you said it. Just the thing about, like, no matter how small you think something is, or if you don't feel like it measures up to somebody else's struggle, it's still equally valid. Because I do think that's true, and I guess I just don't, like, I know it to be true, but I don't always, like, accept it for myself.
Yeah.
Because I mean, one thing that I feel like, I don't know, is not as common anymore, I guess, is like, I actually did have a really good childhood, and I was raised in, like, you know, my family is pretty big, and they're all very close-knit. My parents were still together, and my brothers and I, like, they provided a lot for us growing up, and, you know, we had a lot given to us, and I was really blessed in that way. But I think, I don't know if it's as a result of that or if it's just the way that I am, but I struggle a lot, and especially like in middle school and high school and onward, like I struggle a lot just with general self-esteem, I guess, just particularly in middle school. I mean, everybody kind of goes through that struggle in one way or another. You know, a lot of people have experienced bullying and not being accepted and not fitting in, which I did. But there was kind of a turning point for me somewhere around like 8th or 9th grade. And I didn't have a lot of friends, but
the ones that I did have were really close to me, and like I valued them a whole lot. But somewhere around that time, there was just like something kind of snapped, and I had this need to kind of appease everybody or like please people basically, and so that kind of like shaped my personality from there. And it was kind of it was a spiritual thing for me too, because of the way I was raised and what I believe. It was kind of like a turn the other cheek thing. And, it's like, don't, just because somebody mistreats you, don't throw that back in their face. Just like, be kind, and, that's the best kind of way you can react to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that you should, I don't think that's inherently bad, but I think that you should take it with a grain of salt and understand that there's still a healthy balance to be struck, and you do need to appreciate and value yourself as much as you do with others. And you can still put the needs of others before your own, but if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not really in a position to help anybody else. And even now, that's a pretty big struggle for me. I mean, it's gotten a lot better, but it's an everyday process. Like, some days I wake up feeling great about it. Other days I'm just like, really just in a pit. And there was, I don't want to go into too much specifics, but there was an incident about like 13 years ago-ish that almost broke up my family. And it was pretty like pivotal for everybody, I think. But for me, I can speak for myself and say that I kind of just had to like pull myself together and say, like, if this is going to go on at all, like, these are the things that need to happen. And so I did what I could to kind of keep the peace. And even like, I mean, it was a pretty regular thing for me. Like, when my brothers were fighting, they're both younger than me. They would butt heads a lot, and they just were like oil and water most of the time. And I always like kind of put it on myself to be the mediator and just try to find common ground and like keep the peace. And I found myself doing that a lot, just in my family and my friendships, and not wanting to rock the boat. I'm a very, very non-confrontational person, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can mutate into devaluing yourself and like, just doing everything to make somebody else happy at the expense of your own sanity, pretty much. But yeah, so I kind of just coasted through a lot of like my 20s. I didn't really do a whole lot. I was kind of like, I wasn't independent. I lived with my parents until I was like 26 or 27, and then I ended up meeting somebody who I later married, and throughout the course of our relationship, we were together for about 4 years, and things were moving really fast. I got my first full-time job. We were on a track. We knew we wanted to get married someday, and my ex-wife was going through a lot with her family because her dad was battling with cancer, and he eventually lost that battle and passed away in 2014. And around that time, she looked to my family as a big support because, like I said, there are so many of us, and they all welcomed her in. And but that kind of like made things go even faster. And it wasn't even like a few months after her dad passed away that we got engaged. And there was a lot that I wish I had done differently or thought about. But moral of the story is we did end up getting married, and we were only married for about a year. And it was not great. There were a lot of problems that we both knew about going into it, but we didn't really talk about before we got married, and they kind of just came to light and surfaced. And me being the person I am, I didn't ever bring it up for fear of like jeopardizing anything or like causing any drama or anything like that. I just wanted to do what I could to make it work. And but there were also a lot of things that not even just like, oh, I'm trying to keep the peace. Like, there were a lot of things that I did wrong because I was ill-equipped to do something like that. So we struggled for about a year. We went through, a bunch of different steps. We went to premarital counseling or not premarital, postmarital. Slowly but surely, it just sort of became more and more apparent that it just wasn't going to work at all, which was really hard for me to accept because getting divorced was like absolutely out of the question for me. That was something that growing up, I didn't believe had to be done. I felt like there was always something that you could do, if you humbled yourself enough. But anyway, and it was also, that was a critical time because it was the first like real therapy session I had been in. Like, I've never really done personal therapy or anything like that. So eventually we just kind of decided to call it quits. And that was, I think, that was like fall of 2016, which is around the time I got into Life is Strange. So kind of on the heels of that, I moved out of our townhouse that we were living in together. I knew I didn't want to go back and live with my parents as much as I loved them and get along with them. It wasn't something I wanted to do at that time. So my buddy Joe, he offered to put me up for however long until I found my own place. And so I had been hanging with him for a while, and I was over his house one night, and it was really, really late because we would stay up till ungodly hours in the morning, just talking and bullshitting and watching YouTube videos. But he introduced me to Life is Strange and just said that he had played it recently, and he felt like it would be good for me at that time. And I was a little skeptical. I always enjoyed playing video games, and like, I trust him. He's one of my best friends, and he knew exactly what I was going through at that time, but I didn't really think that a game would make any difference. If anything, I just did it because it was like something to take my mind off everything. And so I started playing it, and somewhere between episodes 1 and 2, I really started to latch on. But even then, it wasn't a thing about like, I really identify with this, or this is like helping me cope. It was just like I got really into the story and the characters and all that. But it actually did become that the further I got into the game. I started to see certain patterns develop and like things that I could relate to. One of the main reasons I identified so much with Max was because, even the mechanic of rewinding time in the game is based pretty much solely upon like making critical decisions and second guessing those decisions, wondering if you should go back and redo them. And that was something that resonated a lot with me because, growing up and with everything that I had experienced, I always thought like, there must be something I can do here. Like, there must have been some decision that would have fixed this. And it's kind of that mentality of like, well, there's this clear cut path. You just have to know which moves to make and you're good. But
Right.
the really like, I think the most important part of Life is Strange for me was like, it's not black and white. Like, you go through the game and you make tons of different decisions, whether minor or major. And while there are only 2 like choices you can make in the end, a lot of what you decide shapes people's reactions and your relationships with them. And some of them aren't right or wrong. It's just whatever you choose. And it kind of puts you in that player's shoes, and like, it's like you're living a virtual life basically. So I felt like this was like a realm for me to kind of try out things and be able to rewind and do stuff again and see how it panned out, which was really therapeutic for me at the time. But I remember when I finished the game, I think everybody knows what I chose in the end, but after it was over, I just stepped outside and just kind of stood there for a good 10 minutes or so. It was like really early in the morning, sun hadn't come up yet, and I just started reflecting, and I don't know if it was like, if it all happened right then and there, but it was definitely soon after that I kind of put the pieces together and realized, like, sometimes, stuff just happens. There are other circumstances at play. There are, other people in your life who also have this free will, and you have these relationships, you have these interactions, but it's not all on you. And it's almost selfish in a way to think that it is, right? Like, to think that everything hinges on what you decide. It's not that way. I mean, it's just, it can't be. So that was really important for me. And so obviously I got really into the game, and I was like super in depth with, like, I would put YouTube videos on at work of like interviews and behind the scenes stuff, and just really diving deep into it. And one of the things that stuck out to me was I don't know if it was actually when Joey and Jamie, when you guys interviewed Hannah, or something else, or maybe both, but I kind of I thought that I was surprised at how relatable she was, and like humble, and just that she really wanted to connect with people who love the game. And shortly thereafter, I kind of like I would actually like interact with her like over Instagram, and at first it was just cool. It was like, oh, she like responded to something I posted, that's fun. But then after a while, like when I was like in the wake of splitting with my wife, I was like going through a really tough time, and I don't want to say I was addicted, but I definitely got into a phase where there was like, I was living in this basement apartment, and there was a bar right near my house, and I would just go there some nights and just kind of like drink really heavily and just not really care about what happened. And it was basically just to forget about everything. And over the next couple months at least, Hannah was actually really supportive, and offered me a lot of advice. And in retrospect, I feel bad about it in some ways, because it was like putting it on a complete and total stranger who I'd never met, and for some reason I felt like I could talk to, but she was never like put off or anything. She would always like respond and try to help out. And so then in turn I ended up getting more into the Life is Strange community. And I mean, you guys have already attested to it, but just the people around this game are some of the best I've ever met. And when I say best, I mean the most accepting and accommodating and just friendly people that I've had the pleasure of meeting, whether in person or over the internet. And even with joining Blackwell podcast just last April, when I got to meet all you guys and we did our first episode, I felt like I was actually a part of something. And it does. It feels like that you are accepted, and there's no like qualification for, like, you don't have to have some crazy backstory. You don't have to, have gone through this or that. It's literally just people from all different backgrounds coming together and unifying under this one game that has done so much. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah. It is really one of the most amazing things about Life is Strange, aside from the game itself, is just, like you said, the unifying thing that it's been.
Yeah.
And man, I can't believe it's already been over a year. It seems like you guys have been with us for
a while.
The whole time, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for sharing, and definitely glad to have you a part of the show. I think
Since...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Since we've kind of all shared, there is one thing that I kind of want to share with that kind of the psychologist that I saw a few weeks ago told me, which it kind of spoke to me a little bit, but that was just mainly with physical, with Crohn's and stuff, but also it kind of speaks to mental stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
That you need to take each day as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
You got to because people know that I've been planning a trip for a long time now, since January, and every opportunity that I've had, it just fell through, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I've learned to kind of accept that, and just I wasn't ready for it, because I wasn't taking it. I was just pushing it away. I wasn't like fully embracing, like, this is a problem, I gotta fix that. I was just pushing it off, all that stuff. So I'm basically trying to get everything in order before I go, which is important, definitely. Which priorities are definitely a big thing to do with mental health. You definitely need, like what everyone said today, is definitely important. Even though we said at the beginning, when we're not professionals, we don't. We're only speaking from experience per se. That we'd like to share what we've learned through these experiences.
Right.
Which it may not help you, but it's kind of helped us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you still, even if you are struggling, you still can be there for other people.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a mutual understanding that sometimes, like, you got to step back, take care of yourself, and the same with them. Sometimes they have to step back and take care of themselves, and it's about patience. It's about just understanding and grace, forgiveness, and I feel like you don't really have to be religious to exhibit those behaviors and to give people that. But I know those are like the tenets of many religions out there. But I think it's like, you still can be there for other people.
Yeah.
And I think...
sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it can be therapeutic in a way. Being there for someone else can help you with yourself. And of course, vice versa. It's not always easy.
Yeah. It's difficult to kind of try and conclude what this episode was. But what we are going to do is we're going to put links into the description for YouTube. With different websites that offer services that can help, whether it be counseling or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
If you are struggling, we highly recommend you try them out. If not, just talk to somebody that you feel close to about it. It's just any small victory can help, really. If that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, if it is a matter of crisis, please seek professional help. There's hotlines. We'll have numbers and stuff. There's many resources, but the best thing that you can do for yourself, if you're struggling with suicidal ideations, if it feels a matter of crisis, don't turn to anyone else but a hotline. Don't turn to anyone else but a professional for it. That's where you're going to get the best help.
Yeah.
It's where you're going to get the most immediate help. If someone comes to you and they are saying that, they think they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to hurt somebody, the best thing you can do as a friend is to get professional help for them. it might feel like, you're like snitching or something like that, but the best thing you can do for a friend is to get them immediate help. If it is a crisis situation. Of course, the best course of events, I don't want to say if you're just struggling, like it's not anything, but if you're struggling, the best course of events is professional help. If you're in a position where that's not easily available for you, do try to reach out to someone, friend, someone that can just be there. They're not going to necessarily have any answers for you or anything like that. But just having someone there in your corner,
or even
someone
help
who cares
you
about
get
you.
help that.
Right.
Yeah.
But above all else, just don't feel like you have to suffer it alone, because you don't have to be alone.
I think that's something that I'm only recently kind of realizing. A lot of the stuff I dealt with, like growing up, I just kind of sucked it up and like bottled it up and just kind of
just moved on.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like process it internally and try to figure it out in my own head and with myself, but I was never really one to share or to seek help. And I mean, when you have like a significant other, I mean, that's like you kind of have a person that's always there for help with that, but to like somebody to talk to. But even without that, like try talking to like a friend, somebody who will understand. Even maybe if they won't understand, they'll do their best.
Right.
But you definitely don't have to do it alone. But that's something that I'm only myself just like coming to terms with and trying. And I'll be honest, sometimes you'll talk to somebody and it won't feel like it helped. That's happened with me, but you gotta try it. Sometimes it will help, sometimes it might not. Sometimes it will help and you just won't realize it till later.
Yeah.
I remember reading that someone said that, I can't remember who it was, but they said if you are going to seek like therapy, it's important to find a therapy that kind of suits you.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
don't go to someone that you're uncomfortable around. Just try and,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
that's like a big...
It should be, finding a therapist should be about the same procedure as like finding a medication that works for you. Like not all of it's gonna work. You need to
It's all
find
trial and error.
Yeah, you gotta find something that suits you.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know firsthand how exhausting that process can be. I've got my fair share of horror stories with therapists, but
Same.
it is still something that's worth doing. Don't push yourself past your capacity for it, because I know it can be exhausting to I guess just take your time with it, be patient with yourself, be patient with the process.
Yeah, if you don't really want to force it, you kind of want it to be natural.
Right. And therapists, counselors, therapists, they're people too, so it's not always going to mesh. Mm-hmm. So it's just something to keep in mind. But that being said, it's still something that should be readily available and easily available. I know I hate that there's not that opportunity for everyone to find professional help like it's needed. But yeah, I mean, it is a process of learning in yourself that it is okay to ask for help, and it is okay to, like, I don't know, not feel like you have to go it alone. It's something that, like, within the past few years that I've just started to, like, slowly coming to terms with, and, like, been practicing, and, like, and it does take some effort to feel comfortable opening up to people. Mm-hmm. I know a big thing for me is the anxiety of, like, I know people have their own struggles.
Yeah.
People have their own problems, and by me going to them, I'm just adding another problem to their life. But
Yeah, totally.
like I said earlier on, we're by nature humans are social animals. So
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else anyone would like to add before we start wrapping up the episode?
I can't think of anything.
I don't think so.
Okay. So should we start wrapping up the episode then?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to us. This was
Yeah.
an opportunity for us to talk about some of the things that are going on in our lives.
Yeah. It's definitely an important episode to us, and we really hope you take the message from this episode. You know that we're all human. You know this is us.
Right.
So yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to listening. Yeah, mental health is definitely an important aspect of Life is Strange.
Right.
And I'm kind of glad that we were able to talk about it, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into schedule so we can kind of end on a lighter note.
Right. We kind of.
So our next, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So our next episode is going to be about Hell is Empty.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And we're looking into doing something for E3. We're unsure about that, but make sure to follow us on Twitter when we'll kind of talk about it.
Right, and we'll announce stuff in the Discord as well.
Yeah, definitely. Then we'll do episodes every 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
Depending on what topic or if we have guests, it's just depending on what we've got planned.
Right.
Honestly, I don't think I haven't got anything planned yet, so that's something we need to do soon.
Well, we had the tentative schedule that we set in the last episode, I believe it was, which we've already broken.
Yeah, it's mainly because
but
yeah, we done goofed, but we're gonna try and do better than that. Gonna try and be more on top of schedule. Speaking of being on top of,
Sorry.
We're gonna look into definitely doing the Patreon hangout soon.
yeah, we tried
really
last
sorry.
weekend, but we sprung it last minute, and so of course that doesn't really work for people in different time zones and all that.
Yeah, so this episode is kind of like a good announcement to say, if you are a patron of ours, keep an eye out on the Discord and through patreon.com, and we'll work it out with everybody to get a time where everyone will be a part of that hangout.
Right.
Because we are really sorry that it's taken us this long.
Right. The big gap, between recording and release of the last episode is 100% my fault. I had a bunch of shit going on and I didn't get the audio editing done. So I'll have this out a lot more timely. But appreciate your patience with us. And so we got the patron thing, potential E3. Just as soon as we find a good opportunity for all of us to take, a few hours, we're gonna look at doing the 6,000 subscriber on YouTube hangout live stream, and we'll probably have a 3rd year anniversary event.
Yeah.
Sometime
That's
in August.
sneaking up.
Yeah. Time just won't stop passing by,
Yeah, please
Slow
stop.
down.
Slow
Chill
down.
out.
So yeah, I think now's a good time to end the episode.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you so much again. We really appreciate the support, especially during this the special episode. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take care of
Take care of
everybody.
yourself.